At least 40 people have been killed in Syria at a weapons depot blast. Says here, rocket attacks struck government-held districts in the central Syrian city of Homs on Thursday, setting off successive explosions in a weapons depot that killed at least 40 people and wounded dozens, says an opposition group and residents said. So that's coming from the terrorists themselves. The blast sent a massive ball of fire into the sky, causing widespread damage and panic among the residents, many of whom are supporters of Assad. Remember what I said here just in the last video, you have these quote opposition that aren't Syrians. They're from England and France and other places, including the United States, and they're occupying the countryside of Aleppo and other places inside Syria. One resident said the explosions were so strong they cracked the walls of some buildings. Thick smoke and dust could be seen from a distance as explosions shook the ground. And Assad, the Syrian president, made some statements recently, said we wouldn't have kept fighting for more than 2 years if we weren't sure of victory. He praised the soldiers' courage in face of barbarism. This is pretty interesting. Assad has framed the revolt against the 4 decades of his family's rule as a foreign-backed conspiracy fought by Islamist, quote, terrorists. So that's to insinuate that they're not terrorists. When pro-democracy protests started in March of 2011, a military crackdown eventually led to an armed insurrection. So they're making it seem like they were resisting democratic reforms or the democratic protests. Well, no, the jihadists that assholes like this are funding, including Israel and the US and the UK, they sent terrorists in there to co-opt what was a peaceful pro-democracy protest and turned it into what it is now, which is not a civil war, it's an invasion by terrorists backed by democratic nations. And Assad was inspecting the army unit. He said, he who gets down to the field with our armed forces and shakes hands with their men is honored. Any citizen will be honored by shaking hands with any fighter of the Syrian Arab army. Being with you on this day, we feel that we are with each fighter in the Syrian Arab army in all places of the homeland squares. In a separate quote, he says here, you have shown rare courage in the battle against terrorism, and you have impressed the whole world with your resistance in one of the most brutal and ferocious wars in modern history. This was my website, ggnonline.com. The domain name now is ggnonline.net, so it's changed. I'm not really sure what happened to the domain. It kind of just vanished and went down a black hole. And when I tried to locate where it went, it had basically tracked it back to Google, saying that Google's now holding it and they're going to try to resell it. So somehow I built up ggnonline.com domain, and now I'm going to have to buy it back or bid for it from Google. There was pretty sly little stuff that they were doing. Like someone said, you should have expected that. And I have tried WordPress, but like I've mentioned before, I'm not very tech savvy, so that's why I did this in the beginning. And I had to go through it all a lot to get back to this, basically my website, ggnonline.net, instead of all the Blogspot crap. You know, I had to put in CNAME codes and stuff, and I never had to do that before. I'm kind of unfamiliar. I'm sure other people had problems, but anyways, that's my website, so you can check it out. All right, report says U.S. sees Israel likely to attack Syria again. Unclear if U.S. will endorse a strike. Israel's July 5th attack on the Syrian coastal base of Latakia has yet to be openly acknowledged by the Israeli government, but was ousted by unknown sources within the Obama regime. According to new reports, the attack wasn't particularly successful and didn't destroy all the stuff that they were hoping to. This has led to the belief that Israel is likely to launch an additional attack. Remember what I said before about the Lebanese analyst who was assassinated after talking about these rare weapons that Syria had? And he said that the attack never happened, that Israel is claiming credit for it. So, Press TV account still inactive despite YouTube claims. So, says here that Press TV has been unable to access its YouTube account since July 25th, despite the video sharing site claims that the alternative TV channel's account has become reactivated. This is July 25th. That's right around when I was having issues. I might as well throw this in there. Major outage on several web hosting companies owned by Endurance International Group. A huge web hosting outage this morning on domains associated with Endurance International Group companies. The U.S. military has awarded contracts to Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. I suppose it just wasn't enough that our allies, the rebels, as they put it, and Syria have significant Al-Qaeda elements to them. No, we are the USA, the best country ever, defender of human rights, city on a hill. We must do far more than that. So we did. The story below from Bloomberg highlights a 236-page report by the U.S. Army Suspension and Debarment Office, which shows that the military contracts have been granted to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. American officials who probably get a lot of money through lobbying by companies like Raytheon and Halliburton are citing due process rights as a reason not to cancel the agreements. I remember before I talked about Libya basically being a smuggling state, and that the CIA was actually there when they were in Benghazi. They were there actually smuggling the arms to the terrorists, which then went into Syria and Mali. Dozens of CIA operatives on the ground during Benghazi attacks. CNN has uncovered exclusive new information about what is allegedly happening at the CIA in the wake of the terror attack. 4 Americans, well, you all know about it, September 11th. So since January, some CIA operatives involved in the agency's missions in Libya have been subjected to frequent, even monthly polygraph examinations. Sources tell CNN dozens of people working for the agency were on the ground that night, and that the agency is going to great lengths to make sure whatever it was doing remains a secret. Libyan army colonel shot dead, says a security official. He was shot dead in the eastern town of Derna, while another was seriously wounded in a second attack in Benghazi. So it's getting pretty heated over there. And like I've mentioned before as well, security headaches dampen investor enthusiasm in Libya. This is from July 30th, 2013. So you never know who it is. You don't know if it's the terrorists that were basically came in from the northeast of Libya. They called them Libyans, and again, just like Syria, pro-democracy activists, when they were not Libyans. They were from somewhere else. They were terrorists. And of course, when all that happened, you had a jailbreak, right? A jailbreak, and all the Al-Qaeda that the Libyan government under Gaddafi had locked up were all of a sudden out. And so they were wreaking havoc, and that's why it didn't take too long to overthrow that country. But one of the main things, though, is that they had a lot of construction projects done through the government and subsidies and stuff like that. So you have this, Al-Hani General Construction Company, and it says here that these militants, they threatened 2 senior employees with a pistol, kidnapped one before freeing him several hours later. They were armed and had handcuffs and shouted, "We are coming for the money." So it's just a real mess, right? You know, because they're gonna sit there and they're gonna scam them. One of the first things that they did, like I said it before in Iraq, was that in Libya they took control of the oil companies or the oil wells, and that's what democracy is. It separates the resources from the people. Threat closes U.S. embassies everywhere on Sunday. State Department says it's out of an abundance of caution. So they ordered embassies in the Middle East and elsewhere to close on Sunday in response to a terror threat. So this is a big false flag warning. Said the closings come out of an abundance of caution, but warned that they could stretch on for days depending on our analysis. So what the hell is this going on? It could be tied to Ramadan? No, I don't think so. So New York Times, they tell the New York Times an Al-Qaeda affiliate is at the root of the threat. So, they stop funding Al-Qaeda, right? 54% say it's scary, so it builds up the fear factor, which is good. Speaking of fear, British Queen's World War III declaration has been released, so she looks like a very angelic person, doesn't she? Full of goodness and love and passion. So it says here, Britain's National Archives has released an old document which, and part of a detailed war game implemented in 1983 depicting the possibility of a nuclear war, that the Queen has the last word on Armageddon. I think most of you guys are aware that a lot of that was just built up to build up the arms race, basically for the military-industrial complexes for both sides. But why is this relative? This just came out today, August 2nd or August 1st. I saw this then, August 1st. How prepared is the Russian military for war? The chances of a direct clash with the U.S. or China are so low that the large-scale exercises seem like a complete waste of resources. Instead, Russia needs to be prepared for regional and localized conflicts. And remember, they just held their biggest military exercise since the Soviet Union. Then you have from McClatchy, with Snowden now free in Russia, the U.S. has few options. So the world, it's just another reason they're building up the enemy. And of course, you have the Olympics now. Oh, the Olympics is being held in Russia. And what's the big thing? Well, those bad Russians, they're not for propagating homosexuality, right? So they're the big devil right now. The Obama regime for weeks has issued only muted criticism of Russia as it implored President Putin's government to do the right thing. U.S. to deploy mobile radar in Kyoto Prefecture to detect missile launches. So the governor and mayor will allow the United States military to set up a facility on the Tango Peninsula facing the Sea of Japan to monitor North Korean missile launches. So maybe it is for North Korea. Or maybe they'll say it's China, or maybe they're saying it's North Korea, and maybe it's really for China. But I don't really know how strong China's military really is. I think it was completely built up by the West, transferring their economy over to them. So then you have here, Japan shows U.S. military facilities to confirm nuclear umbrella. July 31st, Washington welcomes visit to its nuclear weapons facilities by Japan as a way to provide first-hand knowledge of the U.S. nuclear posture and reassurances of its nuclear deterrent. So who knows, right? You know, like we covered in the last set of videos with Germany, you break away from the Jewish banking system, or the established central banking system, you all of a sudden become an enemy. I mean, that could happen with Russia. It could happen with China. South Korea plans to spend billions on missile shields. South Korean Defense Ministry said they offered a 5-year budget proposal, which included major focus to the tune of tens of billions of dollars on increasing the country's ability to thwart possible North Korean missile strikes from reaching their targets. Next up, China eyes a canal project in America's backyard. This was from July 5th. The Nicaraguan parliament voted in favor of building a $40 billion canal across the country connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So China wanted it, right? Well, bam, July 30th. U.S. would be willing to invest in Nicaragua Canal. So the Department of Commerce official said the U.S. and U.S. investors would be willing to invest in the building the canal across the middle of Nicaragua. Deputy Assistant Secretary says he finds the project fascinating. The U.S. government will follow up to see if there's interest from U.S. investors, as long as the process is transparent, because U.S. contractors and government, they really give a crap about transparency. South Africa welcomes Chinese military assistance from July 31st. South African National Defense Force would benefit from Chinese military training, discipline, and expertise if an exchange program were initiated, says the general. Then you have China sending troops to Africa, and this is from July 17th. I've been holding on to this for a while. For the second time in a little over a year, China has infantry on the ground in Africa, reflecting the Chinese military's increasingly global presence. Part of the UN mission to help restore order there in Mali, 395 peacekeepers from China arrived in the Saharan nation. U.S. to go ahead with joint military exercises in Egypt. They still plan to hold major exercises called Bright Star in Egypt mid-September. And their little proxy army, the Egyptian army that works for globalists, they're holding it down right now, but they keep mowing down and taking on these Morsi supporters. It could get a little ugly. So maybe that's why they're going to be in town there. Tunisia forces launch major operation against terrorists. So Tunisia back in the news. The big news is what? It's near the Algerian border. This is all, Libya. You see how all this is destabilized. You're talking about the North African, basically economy. They're trying to unite that with the EU as well. Get that into its yoke. The Tunisian army has launched a large-scale military campaign against terrorists in the mountain region. Then you have Tunisia's ruling party said it won't remove prime minister. Remember, it kept talking about all these Islamic states moving to the left in these recent elections. So the head of the Tunisia's ruling Islamist party said they refused to remove the prime minister from his post, hardening its stance towards the secular opposition's demand that the government be dissolved. Tensions have been rising in the country since the assassination last week of a leftist politician, the second to be slain in 6 months. And talking about the Red Sea region, the battle for Yemen, the strategic importance of the Red Sea and the Arabian Peninsula seas contain two of the most important waterways in the world, Bab Mandab and the Strait of Hormuz. Without them, the geopolitics of the Horn of Africa and the Southwest Asia would make little sense. So then you have U.S. drone pounds Yemen yet again as Hadi visits D.C. It's the third attack this week. They killed 4 identified people, all of whom were immediately branded suspects by the Yemeni government. This is going to be funny. Kerry says U.S. not withdrawing from Afghanistan. It says U.S. committed to stay beyond 2014. So how many times have you heard that? They're leaving, right? NATO vows better cleanup of unexploded munitions as it closes its Afghan bases. But they will manage to leave $7 billion worth of military equipment behind in Afghanistan because it's good for contracts, right? But then they're going to cut all kinds of different programs and that. Online search for pressure cookers sparks police visit. So serious concerns and many questions follow visit by law enforcement. That's what you get now, right? But the FBI said we couldn't have stopped the Boston bombing, so they can't stop them anyways, let alone whether it was some kind of operation. But, you're going to lose your liberties or your freedoms or privilege. And talking about the suspect, Florida won't probe death of Zarnia friend killed by the FBI during interrogation. They shot him. They killed him during interrogation. Thank you.